Hello，你好，Welcome back，欢迎回来to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger and Kitten is taking a nap. Um, today's date is October 9, 2024. Um, Kitten and I have just recently celebrated our 6 years anniversary, and this weekend will be upcoming birthday for Kitten, and then will be uh, Thanksgiving the day after. So it's been busy. It's been crazy busy in the good way. But today I'm going to come back and talk to you guys a little bit about something that a lot of Chinese people like myself, especially those of us that grew up in the 70s and 80s, were extremely geeky and passionate about. Um, Ordinarily, I wouldn't really talk about this particular topic because it is quite a bit removed from the North American white culture, white centric culture. And a lot of you would probably not be able to relate to this. However, in the past few years, I have seen this booming growth in Chinese culture, Chinese pop culture, Chinese movie, and uh, there's a resurgence of martial art movies and kung fu movies and all that stuff. And I've even seen it in the action figure collecting community. There are a big shift over to people collecting third-party action figures and uh, figures that are focused on Chinese folklore and Chinese martial art figures and gods and goddesses. So I think this is a good time for us to talk about the Wuxia culture. Now, a lot of you uh, probably have heard this pronounced as Wuxia, like because it's spelled Wuxia, Wuxia. And so a lot of people walk around pronouncing Wuxia, but the proper pronunciation is Wuxia, Wuxia, Wuxia culture. Wuxia is the Chinese equivalent of what white people read as medieval fantasy, high fantasy. So here in North America, as over there in Europe, a lot of people read things like Forgotten Realms and Dragonlands, and the knights and dragons and princess and magicians and wizards and witches, and an evil warlord and hordes of skeleton warriors in China, a lot of us grow up without those things. A lot of us grow up reading a completely different kind of fiction. We read wuxia. Now, what is wuxia? Uh, the direct translation would put us in martial art hero. Wu, W means martial art, kung fu, that kind of stuff. Xia means vigilante, means hero. If we look at a Chinese calendar, Chinese dictionary for the exact meaning of what would qualify someone as a xia or xiake is a full term. Xiake means hero, vigilante. Uh, the dictionary says to qualify as a shaker means a person uses his or her own power or abilities to right the wrongs that have been done to others. But that qualifies you as a xia or shaker. And if you are really good at what you do, then you turn into a da xia, a big hero, a big vigilante. So, for example, like um, uh, in Mandarin, Iron Man is called 钢铁侠, called like Iron Vigilante. Batman is called 蝙蝠侠. 蝙蝠 means bat, and but we don't call him 蝙蝠人, which Batman would basically translate to. We call him 蝙蝠侠, means 蝙蝠 hero. Okay, uh, um, um, the Flash is called 音速侠. the sound wave hero. So xia is definitely a good term for someone who is heroic or vigilante, someone who use their ability to right the wrongs in the world. Now, when we talk about wuxia, um, that's another term that is not super important but very relevant that I think would be interesting to touch upon. When you read wuxia novel, when you watch wuxia movie, you will often come across a term called jianghu. Jianghu, that Jianghu, Jianghu. And Jianghu is a terminology that is really actually hard to explain, um, because direct translation is river and lake, river and lake. But when they say Jianghu, Jianghu, they have it got nothing to do with river and lake. What it actually means is uh, society, is uh, the 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 state of being in that society where people can't rely on the government. Uh, like the underbelly of the society is usually what Jianghu is referring to. Uh, so traditionally, in most wuxia work, there's two levels of society. There's a guanchang, means government. So that's the imperial emperor and the soldiers and ministers and magistrates. So that's guanchang. That's the government. And then there's jianghu. Jianghu means the commoner, the underbelly of the society, where gangs, the gangsters, and heroes and villains do their things, and they make their own law. They don't obey the law and stuff like that. So Jianghu is uh, basically that. It's one of the uh, wuxia book title, wuxia movie title that I always thought was really cool. Is the person would ask, so what is Jianghu? And then a very mysterious voice would answer, Jianghu is people. People is Jianghu. Wherever there's people, there will be Jianghu. So that is like basically a great way to explain that. Jianghu means people and interaction between people. Um, when we talk about wuxia, there's another terminology that has come up again and again called yi qi, yi qi, Yeche, yi qi. What is Ichi? Ichi is loyalty to your friend, dedication to your friend. It's not Ichi is not like loyalty to your parent, got nothing to do with family. Ichi is not loyalty to your country, got nothing to do with patriotism. Ichi is that trust, that street cred between friends. When I give you my word, I will die to fulfill that promise. When you tell me that uh, when you tell me that you will do something, you will do it even if it costs you your life. That's the kind of 义气 that come up again and again. And to be a 侠, to be a 大侠, to be a big hero in a 武侠 setting, then you need to put 义气 above almost anything. So you have to be like your street creds have to be really good. Your word have to be gold. Your word has to be your bond. So 义气 is like to most 侠客, to most vigilantes, is the most important aspect of their personality. Not all of them, not all of them. There are some that will put patriotism above 义气. There are some that will put love for the family above 义气. But to most, 义气 come first. The loyalty towards your friends. So some people may wonder, uh, so Chinese people have gods and goddesses and dragons and uh, immortals and magic and stuff like that in their literature too. So why is it that high fantasy didn't really become as important to Chinese people? Why do they like to read stories about this hero killing that hero and this hero uh, killing that villain or uh, this hero sacrificing himself for his country? Why do people like to read stuff like that? Well, as far as most historians can figure, it's because of several factors. One of those factors is that throughout Chinese history, uh, there has been a lot of shift in leadership. That every dynasty is different. Every emperor is different. Maybe the previous emperor say everyone should be Buddhist, and then the next emperor said everyone should be Taoist, and then the next emperor said no, 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 the religion is not allowed. So reading things that have elements of gods and goddesses and magic and superstitious stuff was very dangerous. Like maybe yesterday it's okay, and today it's become a restricted material, and tomorrow, if you have ever read this, you may have your head chopped off. So, uh, I mean, in the early days of communist China, when communism first uh, became the ruling philosophy in China, uh, anything religious was uh, pretty much frowned upon. And if you even mention the word ghost, you can be expected to have to write a letter of um, self degradation. You have to like write a letter of apology to your higher up, and they will publish it in in the city square so everybody know. Oh, he talk about ghosts and he's silly, he's stupid. Uh, so in that kind of environment, when you never know uh, if it's okay to read or talk about magic or gods or goddesses, people tend to shy away from that. And so it's not fun anymore reading high fantasy stuff for Chinese people. It became a definite risky kind of entertainment. So people tend to stay away from that. Just in case you didn't know, there are a lot of video games, even today, there are a lot of video games that when they are trying to get into the Chinese market, they have to remove um, elements that are religious. For example, I have heard that whether World of Warcraft or Diablo have to remove anything to do with skeleton warriors because how can skeletons get up and fight people? Obviously, that's superstition, and that's Chinese government might crack down on it. Honestly, the Chinese government don't really care as long as you pay the extra money. It's all about money. As long as you pay them off, they'll be okay. They don't care. But a lot of game developers have to go the extra lengths to cover up any kind of religious or superstitious, supernatural overtone or in their work to get into the Chinese market. So imagine this, a thousand years ago when the emperor wouldn't even ask questions. The emperor would just have your whole family killed because you unknowingly read a novel about some god or something. So yeah, this is one of the primary reasons why high fantasy never really took off in Chinese culture. Now, of course, we have the Journey West, we have the uh, uh, the God making the God maker story, the God War, and we have the Book of Mountain and Sea. Those are all kind of high fantasy, supernatural, great literature work. But uh, uh, for every one of those, there has been many others that were safer to read. and the biggest, safest genre has always been wuxia, the wuxia, and so people kind of uh, read more martial art hero books because that's safe. Uh, Another reason why Chinese people traditionally lean toward wuxia is that it's obtainable. It's obtainable. What I mean by that is when you read a book like God War or 封神演义 or Journey West 西游记, those books like you're reading about people or immortals that live for millions of years and like they can lift a mountain with a single hand. No matter how hard you struggle, no matter how much you love those books, it can't really inspire you. It's not very inspiring because you'll never, at least if you have your right mind, you'll never be Sun Wukong, you'll never be 二郎神, you'll never be 四大天王, you'll never be the four heavenly lords. You'll never be able to like wave your hand and the cloud part for you. Yeah, it's never going to happen. But reading wuxia, and we'll touch on that a little bit because some people will look at today's wuxia and say, well, that's really stupid too. That's really crazy. Like the kind of stuff they show in today's wuxia movie. And yes, I agree. But there's a reason for that. But traditionally speaking, wuxia were very realistic. Traditional wuxia books, like one of the greatest works was the Water Margin. Um, and we'll come back to that in a little bit as well. The Water Margin is basically one of the greatest literary work of wuxia genre books, uh, and it's basically a Chinese version of Robin Hood, and it's realistic. Yeah, like if it doesn't matter how good you are, if you someone stick a dagger in your back, you die. You get hit in the face with an arrow, you die. Um, it's a it's heroes that people can actually relate to because they are pretty human. They have flaws. They have anger issues. They have jealousy issues, and heroes that people can aspire to. Like there are many people who, after reading the Water Margin, go out there and grab a tree in their yard and try to pull the tree out of the ground, like the monk Lu Zhishan. Um, uh, they they are slightly exaggerated, but not out of possibility. Like, I'm sure you get the strongest man in the world to pull a tree out of the ground. He can probably do it. So it's humanly possible. It's very difficult, but it's humanly possible. So a lot of the traditional wuxia work were enjoyed by people because they give you a sense that if you just work harder, work out harder, have a better diet, have a healthier lifestyle, you might be one of these 大侠 like you enjoy to read about in the book. I mean, honestly, even for myself, I find that uh, when I read about comic superheroes, I lean a lot towards superheroes like Punisher and Batman, much more than I ever lean towards guys like Wolverine or Superman or Wonder Woman. And for that exact same reason, when I read about Superman and Wonder Woman and Flash and Wolverine and all those guys with superpowers, it's enjoyable, but it's kind of a downer because I know like no matter how hard I work, I'll never be like Superman. I'll never be able to fly. I'll never be able to lift an entire building up with one hand. So it's not something I can aspire to become. However, you read something like The Punisher or Batman, uh, and you kind of get the feeling that I could do that. Like if I have the money he has, then and I throw in a bit of training, I find the right teacher, I can probably do that. So you have more to relate to. Like the heroes are human. The heroes are uh, they actually have human limitations. You and I, we can't take a shot to the head. Well, Batman can't take a shot to the head either. Punisher can't take a shot to the head either. So it's yeah, there are some minor exaggeration as needed because it's comic book. They can't just have Batman get shot in the head and die. So usually, what's going to happen is Batman gets shot in the head, and then you think he died, and then later you realize that he was wearing some kind of device that redirected the bullet at the last second. Okay, yeah, that's lame, but I can go with that. Um, so these more human superheroes tend to appeal to a wider audience, just like the wuxia style novels in Chinese history. So let's go back in time and look at the grandfather of wuxia, at least what historians often refer to as the earliest form of wuxia, the first hero, the first vigilante uh, that kicked off the whole wuxia genre of entertainment. This guy, I'm happy to report, was actually real. Okay, it's in real history, and a lot of you that read history would recognize his name. His name is Jin Ke, or some people pronounce Jin K, uh, but it's Jin Ke, Jing Jin Ke. Who is or who was Jinke? Jinke was that crazy guy who attempted to assassinate King Shi Wen, the king emperor uh, who built the Great Wall. We talked extensively about King Shi Wen in the past. He was both a leader, a great leader, a great visionary, uh, a conqueror, and also a tyrant. Okay, he built the Great Wall not with his own hand. He commanded for the Great Wall to be built, but okay, still, he united the entire China. Uh, he designed some of the best weapons and technologies of the time. He did a lot of things. He also excavated some of the water system, some of the irrigation system in China that is still there today. King Shuan did a lot of things for his people, but he was a tyrant. If you piss him off, he kill you. He also destroyed a huge amount of books, killed a lot of scholars because he believed that smart people rebel, uh, stupid people obey. so yeah, I mean you can't really argue with that logic. But anyway, he killed a lot of scholars. So finally, he's uh, all the bad things he did started to get to a lot of people, but most people just took it, uh, you know, uh, didn't dare to make a peep, didn't because King Shiwan was famously brutal and very, very good at warfare. A lot of countries just bent over backward to try to please him. A lot of people, a lot of lords, and just let him do whatever he would. Well, finally there was a hero. There's the guy who said, "The hell with this! I'm going to sacrifice myself and to get rid of this guy so people can live in peace and harmony." And that guy was Jin Ke. The Jin Ke, uh, not all on his own. He had to go through like he had help from a lot of people. There were a lot of people died to finally get him uh, into the palace. Uh, there was even a guy, one of his best friends, uh, who was a wanted fugitive, and to be able to convince the imperial guard to let Jinke into the palace, this guy chopped off his own head, killed himself, chopped off his own head, told Jinke, "Take my head and tell the emperor that you have the head of the wanted fugitive, and the emperor will let you in to see him." Like there were a lot of things like that. Great people died to let Jinke get Jinke near the the tyrant. Uh, and well, unlike most wuxia, this one did not have a happy ending because Jinke totally failed. Okay, totally failed. Um, Now, depending on the source that you read about Jinke, if you read about Jinke in the wuxia novel, then Jinke was like, well, he's basically like Deadpool, like a Chinese version of Deadpool, 3,000 years ago. He can he can kill a person just by moving past them. He can single-handedly destroy a thousand people with a wave of his sword, and he can appear behind you and you wouldn't even hear it. And he wouldn't even have to open the door to get into the room. All that, like there's a lot of crazy legends about how great Jinko was. Like he can single-handedly pick up an entire grown bull, and he can cut a tree in half with the blade of his hand, and all that craziness. And then, of course, there were a lot of novels about how Jinko was actually having sex with Qin Shi Wen, the emperor's mistress, and that's why he had to kill the emperor because he wanted to be with his love and all that. Like, okay, all that is crap. All that is BS. Okay, it's good story, but like most wuxia, it's highly exaggerated. It's fictitious. It's not true. Okay, we look at the real history in actual history, what actually happened that day, then we can actually surmise that Jinke kind of sucked. Like he wasn't this great hero, great swordsman, great warrior that Wuxia made him out to be. Okay, let's examine the interaction between him and King Shi Wen, the tyrant, that day. I'm just going to use his real name, Qin Shi Wang, because every day I say King Shi Wen, I kind of flinch. It's not how you're supposed to pronounce that. Qin Shi Huang is how the emperor's name is actually supposed to be pronounced, but whenever I say that English pronunciation, I feel like I'm going to bite my tongue. Um, so Jinke finally, after the assistance of many people died, and he finally got to go into the palace and see Qin Shi Huang. He pretended that he's going to present a map to the tyrant. He said, "Your Majesty, I have a map that will allow you to conquer blah 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 country easily. Can I bring it to you?" And oh, by the way, I also have the head of this wanted fugitive you'll be hunting for a while. And Qin Shi Huang was so happy. He said, "Okay, cool. Bring them to me. Bring me the map and bring me the head." And so Jinke walked up to Qin Shi Huang, and right there he pulled a dagger from inside the map and lunged at Qin Shi Huang. Now, keep in mind, at this point, Qin Shi Huang's totally unsuspecting. He's sitting down. I addressed this in our Tactical Tuesday before. Like when you get attacked and when you're sitting down, it's a completely different story. Like you don't move the same way. Okay, a lot of people can't even react. So here Qin Shi Huang, totally unsuspecting, sitting in his throne, and Jinke just like pull a dagger out of the map and lunge at him. Qin Shi Huang was able to deflect the dagger, bare hand, mind you, bare hand, get out of his throne and ran away. And then Jinke basically chased Qin Shi Huang around the friggin' palace, and Qin Shi Huang was running around this big pillar in the palace that was holding up the roof. The Qin Shi Huang circled around the pillar. All this is in the real account, in the real history. Um, so Qin Shi Huang uh, ran around the pillar trying to get away from Jinke, the assassin, and the Jinke was like chasing behind him. Again, um, they did this for at least a couple of minutes. Jinke was unable to catch Qin Shi Huang. Right? And finally, one of Qin Shi Huang's attendants, actually a court doctor, decided to save the emperor, and so he took the medical box, like the box that he kept the medicine in, and threw it at Jinke and smacked Jinke on the side of the head, and Jinke fell down, and that's when Qin Shi Huang finally was able to pull out his own sword and defend himself. And in desperation, at his last act of defiance, Jinke threw the dagger at Qin Shi Huang. They were only like 6 feet apart. Okay, at this point, where Qin Shi Huang was coming toward him with his sword, and Jinke threw the dagger at him, totally missed. The dagger just like bounced off the pillar, and then Qin Shi Huang killed him with his sword. That's how the that's how the real story ended. That's how Jinke was ended. Uh, so if we look at this whole thing, okay, the guy is sitting down. You lunge at him with a dagger, and he was able to block that and get away from you. That already tell me you're not a great warrior. Like you're not a good assassin. And then you chase the guy around the palace for a few minutes, running in circles around the pillar. You can't catch the guy. I mean, are you kidding me? Like this is not an Olympic athlete. This is an emperor who mostly just sit around and sign papers every day, and you can't catch him. So that tells us that Jinko wasn't a really good runner. He wasn't very fast. And then, last but not least, the court doctor, who was not a martial artist, not a hero, the court doctor, through the medical case, was able to hit Jinke on the side of the head. Jinke threw a dagger at the emperor from within 6 feet, did not even come close to hitting the emperor. So not only was Jinke not a good assassin, very slow, and he had really bad aim. Um, so sad to say, the real story went down really bad for Jinke, and Jinke wasn't anyone special. He wasn't a great warrior or anything. He was just basically an ordinary guy who was lucky enough to get close to the emperor and try to assassinate him and totally failed. But after Jinke was killed and disposed of, what he tried to do was then publicized, uh, and the commoners, the civilians, started to hear about this guy who tried to assassinate the tyrant, and of course, then the commoners, the civilians, started retelling the story, and everyone embellished it just a little bit more, and Jinke very quickly had his own book published, had his biography and all that stuff, and people started making him into this godlike warrior who tried to assassinate the demonic emperor, and unfortunately failed because the emperor has some evil magic or some stuff like that. So you can say in many ways, Jinke, even though he did not accomplish his mission, he did kickstart the wuxia genre of entertainment for Chinese people. And then fast forward to about Tang Dynasty, about year 500, 600, wuxia entertainment, wuxia novels, and wuxia storytelling was at its peak for Chinese people. Because during the Tang Dynasty, China was at a time of peace and prosperity, and people had more money, more time for entertainment. So people who could tell a good wuxia story, whether on paper or in a stand-up storytelling setting, were immensely popular. Many historically important people were big fans of wuxia work, such as the poet Li Bai, often credited to be the greatest poet in Chinese history. Um, Li Bai, for a lot of you who don't know, walk around carrying a sword on his belt, writing poetry, drinking. Uh, Mostly, he carried a sword because when he first was growing up, Li Bai's biggest dream was to be able to learn how to use a sword and kill all the bad guys and become a daxia, a big hero. He was a big fan of Wuxia books and some of his poetry, such as one of the famous one called 侠客行, means a hero's journey. Is a reflection of his younger day, dreaming to one day become a daxia. And not just Li Bai. I think a lot of us that grew up in Taiwan, China, or Hong Kong in the 70s and 80s, we all, when we were teenagers and kids, we all had those moments where we grab a stick off the side of the ground and pretend we had a sword and pretend like we try to learn some sword technique and then you know every time we walk through a door, we would use our foot to kick the door open, and anytime we sit in a chair, we would sit backward, and anytime we sit down, we would stick the stick in our belt like we're carrying a sword, and we never want to walk through a door if we can jump over a fence or climb over a railing. All that childhood nonsense were a direct result of wanting to be like those awesome heroes in wuxia books, wuxia movies, wuxia comic books. From Tang Dynasty, we fast forward to Ming Dynasty, about 800 years ago. And Ming Dynasty, the greatest wuxia book of all time, was written, called Water Margin. Um, it's called 《水浒传》in Mandarin. Um, Water Margin, as I mentioned, is like a story of like a Chinese version of Robin Hood. There's 108 people from different walks of life. Some of them were warriors, some of them were butchers, some of them monks, some of them were criminals. They all gathered on this mountain and became brothers and sisters, and they used their martial art and ability to rob the uh, government and distribute the wealth to the poor and fight off invading forces and all that stuff. So Water Margin has always been credited as the greatest wuxia novel of all time. And now the interesting thing is, wuxia genre, traditionally speaking, for a couple of thousand years, have been very, if not uh, if not gritty, then we can say it was kind of dark, because traditionally speaking, these 侠客, these heroes, they were criminal. A lot of them were criminals. A lot of them rape and kill people. Uh, but they focus a lot of their energy on doing good things too. So they were like they were not these perfect role model upstanding citizens that we see more today. Like with the Water Margin, for example, that some of them were cannibals, some of them killed children, some of them killed women. Uh, like these were not nice people, uh, but because they were robbing the rich and giving the money to the poor, they were still called heroes. Uh, in 1911, 1912, when the imperialism was overthrown in China and uh, democracy was brought into Chinese people, wuxia work undergone a facelift, because now that we are trying to have a democratic society, we can't have heroes that go around murdering people just because they piss them off. We can't have heroes that walk around and just take whatever women they feel like. Uh, no, those were bad stuff from the old imperial days. So you'll notice that any martial art, any wuxia work that was published after 1912 has a very distinctive, different tone to them. The heroes are now clean shaven. The heroes are now very educated. The heroes are now gentleman-like, and they there's more elements of romance, there's more elements of patriotism uh, injected into wuxia work in the attempt to brainwash the uh, the masses, get people to be more like these perfect image heroes. And then in the 70s and 80s, when China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan finally started to communicate with each other and entertainment started to flourish, then uh, we started to get exposed to some of the greatest modern wuxia literatures. I'm going to mention three names, uh, and so those of you who might one day, hopefully, their work will all be translated into English. But if even not, those of you who can read Chinese, hopefully one day you'll find it in yourself to check out these three people's work. One of them is Liang Yusheng, uh, and he's credited as the grandfather, the godfather of modern wuxia novels. And the second one, my personal favorite, is Jin Yong. Jin Yong, his English name is Louis Cha, Louis Cha, Louis Cha, Jin Yong. He's many people believe, and myself included, greatest wuxia author of all time. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago. That was really sad. Um, I grew up reading so much of his work, and even today I still go back and reread them. Like that, some of his work I've read like 8 or 9 times, and I still not tired of them. And then the third one is more modern, called uh, Gu Long. So Liang Yusheng, Jin Yong, Gu Long, these three are the three pillars of modern wuxia work. Like honestly, I won't say that other people's are not worthwhile reading, but comparing to these three, anyone else's just copycat, just not nowhere near as good. Um, and they all three of them have distinctive different style. Liang Yusheng was the first one to write this more modern wuxia work, and his work are more orthodox. So his heroes are historical. He had a lot of historical accuracy in his book, and his heroes were uptight, proper, prim, perfect human beings. Um, Jin Yong, uh, on the other hand, is only somewhat orthodox. He's still very historically accurate. He did a lot of research. Almost everything he mentioned in his book, you can find truth of in one form or another. But his heroes were more reluctant. They didn't want to be heroes. They had their own flaws. They had own weaknesses. They had own problems, and they were more human. Uh, and then Gulong, the third one, is totally not orthodox. If you like a book that you don't care about historical background or accuracy, you just want a book where there's a lot of good action, good fights, and good martial arts, then Gulong is the one. Because he doesn't care about accuracy. He doesn't care about logic or would this really work. He basically just tell really good stories, and his heroes are very anti-law, like very anti-society, very rebellious. His heroes are more close to what we would call anti-heroes nowadays. Now let's address the elephant in the room. I mentioned earlier that we're going to come back and talk about why do modern wuxia movies and portray, portrayals on TV and movie theater, big screens look so awkward and not realistic. Okay, uh, to put it in context, the old wuxia for thousands of years The old wuxia has been more realistic, just slightly exaggerated. So think of it as a Bruce Lee movie. Think of it as a Steven Seagal movie or a Jackie Chan movie, where they get punched in the face, they fall down. Okay, and then if you want to knock someone over, you have to kick them or punch them or stab them. Like the actions were realistic. That's the traditional wuxia. However, starting from the 60s and 70s, we start to see this new breed of wuxia, and it's so popular today that a lot of Chinese people just like watch it and don't even bat an eyelash, don't even question it, and think it's so awesome. Um, this new breed of wuxia look more like Dragon Ball Z or Star Wars, where the hero and the villain stand like uh, 20 feet away from each other, and then they wave their hand at each other, and then they shoot this fireball, and then there's like wind coming. So imagine watching Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Ring. That is the kind of wuxia that we see today, like special effect, and the wave of their hand, and the door will open for them. It's like they're using the force, like in Star Wars. Okay, that they don't even need to hold onto their sword. Their sword just automatically float in the air, and they wave their finger, and their sword fly over and cut off the enemy's head. Right? And then they spread their hand, and the sword suddenly grow to be 20 feet long, and it can cut down 20 people at once. Like that kind of really crazy nonsense, like Hollywood style, like anime style fighting that it's not even realistic, nowhere logical. Um, but it was a necessary evil because once guns and tanks got introduced to human civilization, people started to lose faith in martial art because no, it doesn't matter what kind of martial art you know, you're never going to survive a gunshot. Okay, it doesn't matter how good a martial artist you are, you're not going to charge someone with a machine gun and survive. So wuxia was dying out because people lost faith in wuxia. Like, what's the point of these heroes? They will not be able to stand up against a American cowboy. Uh, so they needed to bring people's love back to wuxia, and how they did it was by telling people, okay, well, you think that that's all they can do, but what if their chi was so strong that by waving their hand, they can destroy your gun from 10 feet away? Then what are you going to do with your gun? How are you going to fight them then? That, so they started implementing things like that in the movie. And that was interesting to people because it's a new concept that was never done before. It's ridiculous, but it's so much fun. So a lot of us that grew up watching these, we just like we don't even think too deep into it because we know it's ridiculous, but it just looks so much fun. Like, a lot of time when we watch wuxia movie, we don't even care about the storyline. We just like, okay, I wonder when he uses his special attack, what's it going to look like? Is it going to look like a dragon, or is it going to come out looking like a snake, or how wide the devastation is that going to cause? How many people can he hit with that? Like a lot of the focus is on these special effects, ridiculous special abilities. Now we talked a lot about wuxia today, and like I said, this is like my personal passion. Like as we speak right now, I am in the process of rereading one of my wuxia novels that took me a year to read through. This time, hopefully, it will be a little bit faster. Um, but I enjoy wuxia as a child and as an adult. It's still something that I immensely enjoy, even as a guilty pleasure or junk food book, as I call them. I hope that this episode has been, if not educational, somewhat interesting to some of you. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。